My name is Elena Carter. I'm 34 years old. And the day my father's will was read, my older brother stood up in front of everyone, looked straight at me and said, "Before we go any further, I think we should address the fact that Elena has already taken what doesn't belong to her. No hesitation, no doubt, no evidence. Just blind certainty. And the worst part? Nobody questioned him." My stepmother, Linda, slowly nodded as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. My Aunt Claire crossed her arms and leaned back like she was settling in for a good show. Even the lawyer, Mr. Harris, paused, frowned, but didn't interrupt. They all just accepted it. They accepted it as a fact that I was the kind of person who would steal from my own dying father. And I sat there, hands folded in my lap, spine straight, keeping my breathing slow and steady, saying absolutely nothing. Because there is a very specific kind of silence you learn when you've been underestimated your entire life. I had mastered it. But here's what none of them knew. For the last 6 months of my father's life, while everyone else visited just long enough to be seen, I had been building something. Not an argument for a fight, not a defense speech. I was building a record, a digital, encrypted, irrefutable trail. And when the lawyer finally opens the second envelope, the one nobody in that room even knew existed, everything they thought they knew about me will collapse. If you've ever been that person in the family who just shows up and quietly fixes what others broke, while everyone else talks over you, then you already know how this kind of story ends. But the way we get there, they are definitely not ready for that. My mother died when I was 9. Car accident. Rainy highway. One of those phone calls that divides your life into before and after. My father didn't remarry right away. For a few years, it was just the two of us in a house that felt too large and too quiet, learning how to exist around that absence. He worked more. I spoke less. Somewhere in that vacuum, we became functional, but we never got close. When I was 14, Linda entered our lives. She brought with her a trail of cloying perfume that lingered for hours in the hallways, a sharp, strained smile, and her son, Marcus. Marcus was 17. And even then, he carried himself like the world owed him something. From the very first day, the roles were rigidly assigned. Marcus was, quote, the future of the family. I was background. He got all the attention, the expectations, the investment. I got independence, which sounds like freedom, until you realize it's just a polite word for being left alone. I learned early how to take care of myself. I got a part-time job at 16, paid for my own textbooks. Learned how to cook, clean, manage bills, and fix outlets, simply because if I didn't do it, nobody else would. Marcus never had to learn any of that. Linda vigilantly shielded him from reality. She would often tell him to focus on his potential, sliding a dinner plate toward him, because his future was too important to waste on domestic trifles. Obviously, my future wasn't considered important. By the time I graduated from high school, I understood one simple thing. If I disappeared from this house tomorrow, nothing would change. And so, I disappeared. I moved 3 states away, majored in information systems, worked nights, graduated without a single cent of debt, and built a career in cybersecurity and data protection. Not glamorous. Not visible. But stable. Precise. Controlled. I liked that, because digital systems don't know how to lie. But people do it constantly. I returned only for holidays. Birthdays. Obligations. Marcus stayed in our hometown. He went into real estate, thanks to my father's connections, not talent. He made money quickly, lost it even faster, but always somehow landed on his feet. Because someone was always there to catch him. Usually, it was my father's wallet. Years passed like that. Parallel lives, minimal overlap. Until the call came. It was Linda. Her voice was softer than usual, almost fragile. "Your father collapsed," she said. "It's his heart." I was on a work call when it happened. I remember staring at my screen, watching security graphs on servers update in real time, feeling something inside me, not break, no, shift. That same night, I drove for 6 hours straight. When I got to the hospital, Marcus was already there. He was leaning against the wall in the corridor, scrolling through his phone feed. He looked up when he saw me. "Didn't think you'd get here that fast," he threw out. Not surprise, not relief. Just an assessment of arrival. I drove without stopping, I replied. He nodded, as if that confirmed some internal theory of his. My father survived the first attack. But he was no longer the same man. There was a hesitation in him, a slowing down. He resembled a powerful server running on dying, worn-out hardware. And that was when it all began. I started coming every weekend, then twice a week, then almost every day, switching to remote work. Not because anyone asked me to, but because nobody else was doing it properly. Linda was responsible for the facade, conversations with chief doctors, phone reports to relatives, carefully rehearsed grief in public. Marcus was responsible for nothing. He dropped by when it was convenient, stood in the room just long enough for the doctors to notice him, and evaporated before any unpleasant necessity arose, like helping our father get to the bathroom. And my father noticed. He didn't say it directly, but I saw it in the way his eyes followed me when I cleaned the room, in the way he exhaled when I adjusted his pillows, in the way he stopped asking Marcus for anything at all. One evening, about 2 months after he was discharged home, he said something that seemed strange to me at the time. "Elena," he said quietly, looking at my hands adjusting the medical monitor by his bed. "You always did understand how things are really set up." I smiled slightly. "That's my job, Dad. Systems, logic." He shook his head. "No. I'm not talking about computers." He looked past me, into the dark window. "I'm talking about people." That was the first time I realized my father was watching his family much more closely than any of them thought. A week after that conversation, I installed a security system in the house. Everything was done officially. A smart home setup, motion sensors, fall sensors for elderly people, and high-definition cameras in common areas, the living room, hallway, corridors, and kitchen. No hidden surveillance, no spying in bedrooms. Everything was open, legal, and transparent. "I don't like being watched," Linda snapped when she saw the first lens under the living room ceiling. "It's for Father's safety," I replied calmly. "If he falls when we aren't around, or if an attack begins, the system will instantly call an ambulance and send a notification." Marcus just laughed, walking past with a cup of coffee. "And what exactly are we protecting here?" "There's nothing here worth stealing." I looked at him, and for a split second, a tiny fraction of a second, something twitched in his eyes, too fast to catch red-handed, but too deliberate to ignore. "I work in security, Marcus," I said quietly. "I prefer exact data over assumptions." My father personally approved the installation. He signed the documents and the data processing consent himself. For me, this was of key importance, because everything I built next rested on one foundation: absolute legitimacy. The system automatically uploaded all recordings to a remote cloud server, military-grade encryption, remote access only via my security token, and most importantly, timestamps that could not be forged or altered. No one in this house could delete a single second of video. Even I couldn't modify a file without the logs recording it. I set up the system perfectly, checked every angle, every blind spot, eliminated any technical glitches. And I stepped aside, because the truth doesn't need interference. It just needs to be allowed to record itself. Back then, I thought I was protecting my father from an accident. I didn't realize I was creating the only thing that would ultimately protect me. My father passed away quietly in his sleep 4 months later, and a week after the funeral, we all found ourselves in this spacious, cold office of the attorney, Mr. Harris. And so we returned to the freezing point. Marcus stands there, pointing an accusing finger at me. Linda triumphantly purses her lips. "Marcus," Mr. Harris coughed, adjusting his glasses. "This is a very serious allegation." "What exactly are we talking about?" Marcus slammed a thick plastic folder onto the table. "We are talking about systematic theft, Mr. Harris. While my father lay dying, my dear sister, who suddenly flared up with filial love for him, had full access to his things, the personal safe in his office, and his documents." A suffocating silence hung over the office. Aunt Claire gasped quietly, though you could tell from her eyes that she was thrilled by the drama. "A month ago," Marcus continued, enunciating every word, $30,000 in cash vanished from Father's safe, along with the original old title deeds to a plot of land in the suburbs, which Father was going to sell to cover his debts. And guess who had access? Linda was in a sanatorium for 3 days. I was on a business trip. Only Elena remained in the house. Linda pulled out a handkerchief, pressing it to the corners of her eyes. I didn't want to believe it, Elena, she whispered. But the locks on the safe weren't broken. Only family members knew the code, and it was right after that weekend that you suddenly paid off your car loan, right? Where did you get that money? Marcus smiled triumphantly. He had done his homework. He had checked my open financial markers. He had prepared a perfect, logical trap. If an ordinary 34-year-old woman were in my place, she would already be shouting, crying, or frantically making excuses. But I continued to sit motionless. In my head, terabytes of information were lining up into a perfect, cold chain of data. Elena, Mr. Harris said softly, looking at me with genuine regret. Do you have anything to say about this? Before the will is read, we are obligated to record any claims of the parties. I slowly raised my eyes to my brother, Marcus. My voice sounded surprisingly calm, almost bored. Are you sure about the dates? You claim this happened on the weekend of May 13th and 14th, when Linda was out of town? Absolutely, he snapped. I have a statement from Father's bank confirming that the money was withdrawn by him the day before, for a deal that fell through. The money was in the safe. After your weekend, it was gone. Excellent. I turned to the lawyer. Mr. Harris, you have a sealed envelope with my father's primary will on your desk. But before you open it, I ask you to open the second envelope, which my father sent to you via courier 2 days before his death. You did receive it, didn't you? Mr. Harris frowned for a moment, and then his eyes widened. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a narrow envelope sealed with wax, on which my father's hand had written, "To be opened at the request of Elena Carter before the primary will." Linda sat bolt upright in her chair. Her practiced mask of grief slipped for a second, exposing pure panic. "What is that?" she asked sharply. "Robert didn't have any other documents. We handled all of his affairs. You only handled what he allowed you to see," I said quietly. Mr. Harris carefully opened the envelope with a letter opener. Inside was a regular flash drive and a single sheet of paper signed by my father and certified by another notary 3 weeks prior. "Here is a directive from my late client," Harris read, his voice noticeably faltering. "He asks to attach the digital materials contained on this medium to the case, as they bear a direct relevance to the distribution of his estate and the competence of the heirs." I pulled my work laptop out of my bag, turned the screen toward everyone present, and held out my hand. "Allow me, Mr. Harris. I will connect to the secure cloud via this token. The decryption keys are on the flash drive." Marcus took a step forward, his face turning red and splotchy. "What kind of nonsense are you pulling? What does this have to do with you stealing the money?" "Everything, brother." I entered the password, and the interface of my home video surveillance system opened on the screen. "Remember when you laughed at my cameras? You thought they protected the house from outside thieves. But I told you right away. I don't like to guess. I prefer to know." I clicked on an archive folder labeled May 13th, 23:14. A clear, detailed video from my father's office appeared on the screen. The room was dark, but the camera's night mode perfectly captured what was happening. The door opened. A person entered the office. It wasn't me. It was Marcus. The video clearly showed how he approached the safe, dialed the code without a single second of hesitation, a code he had spied from our sick father, opened the door, and pulled out a thick wad of bills and a dense folder with the land documents. Then he carefully closed the safe, turned his face straight toward the camera, and that very same predatory, confident smile he had walked into this office with today was reflected on his face. The lawyer's office became so quiet you could hear the traffic humming outside on the street. This is a setup," Marcus shouted, flinching away from the table. "She's an IT specialist. She could draw anything she wants. This is a fake. This video," I said in an icy tone, "is equipped with a cryptographic timestamp, synchronized with a trusted time server. The upload logs show that the file was recorded and sent to the cloud on May 13th at 23:15 local time. Any attempt to change even a single pixel would destroy the file's hash sum. Mr. Harris, as a lawyer, you can hand this flash drive over to any independent forensics expert. They will confirm. The video is 100% authentic." Linda sat as pale as chalk, her fingers spasmodically clutching her purse. "But where did you get the money for the car?" she stammered, clinging to the last straw. I am a lead engineer at a major corporation, Linda. My annual bonus for closing the security quarter was $40,000. A statement from my official account is also in that envelope. I don't take what belongs to others. My own intelligence is enough for me. I turned to Marcus, who was breathing heavily, realizing that his perfect plan had just turned into a trap. But that's not all, I added softly. Mr. Harris, please play the next file. From May 21st. The next video captured the kitchen. My father was sleeping upstairs at the time. Linda and Marcus were sitting at the table. The audio was crystal clear. The directional microphones of the smart home sensors worked flawlessly. On the recording, Marcus's voice said, "He's going to rewrite the will, Mom." I saw the way he looked at Elena. If she gets a share in the company or this house, I'm done. My creditors won't wait. I need that $30,000 now, and I need the land documents to secure a quick loan. Keep it down, Linda's voice replied on the recording. Take the documents. When he dies, we'll say Elena did it. Harris will believe it. Robert always thought she was secretive. We'll frame her as a thief, and under the unworthy heirs clause, she won't get anything. The main thing is to hold out until the reading. The video stopped. Aunt Claire slowly turned her gaze from the screen to Linda, and there was no longer any desire to watch a show in her eyes. There was deep, sincere disgust. Mr. Harris slowly took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and looked at Marcus and Linda. "Well then," he said quietly, "I think the question of who took what doesn't belong to them here is closed. And I have bad news for both of you. According to the criminal code, this is not just a family dispute. This is grand theft and fraud, committed by a group of persons by prior conspiracy." Marcus collapsed into a chair, covering his face with his hands. Linda tried to say something, but only a miserable, raspy sound escaped her throat. And now, I closed my laptop and folded my hands in my lap, maintaining that same straight posture. "Mr. Harris, please. Read my father's actual will." The lawyer took the first, large envelope. His fingers were no longer shaking. Now the system ruled this room. My system. And as the thick paper of the will unfolded, the room prepared to hear the finale of a story they had never been able to calculate. Attorney Harris carefully smoothed out the thick pages of the primary will. The deafening silence still loomed over the room, but now it was different. Suffocating for Linda and Marcus, and crystal clear for me. I, Robert Elliott Carter, being of sound mind and memory. The lawyer began to read. His voice echoed through the office like the strikes of a metronome. The first clauses were standard. My father made sure that Linda had a roof over her head. She was bequeathed a small country house in a neighboring state for life, along with a modest monthly annuity, which was enough for a quiet, measured life, but by no means for luxury or expensive resorts. Hearing this, Linda didn't even raise her head. She continued to stare at the floor, realizing that her brilliant future had just shrunk to the size of a provincial cottage. When Harris moved on to Marcus's share, he paused and looked at my brother over his glasses. "To my son, Marcus Carter, I bequeath the sum of $1, as well as the full cancellation of all his debt obligations to me, which, at the time of drafting this document, amount to $420,000. I paid for his mistakes his entire life. With this, my parental duty is fulfilled." Marcus didn't even flinch. He sat staring at a single point, pale, his jaws clenched tightly. All his houses of cards, built on real estate schemes and endless loans from our father, collapsed in a single day. Without my father's financial cushion, his creditors would tear him to pieces. "All remaining property," Harris continued, his voice taking on a special solemnity, "including the controlling stake in my company, current bank accounts, as well as the rights to all intellectual and real estate objects, I bequeath to my daughter, Elena Carter. She is the only one who asked for nothing from me, and the only one who gave me protection when I needed it most." Aunt Claire exhaled softly. "Oh my God." But I felt no triumph. My eyes were fixed on Mr. Harris, who, instead of closing the folder, took out a final, separate sheet of paper from it, to which a heavy, old-fashioned silver key with a serial number stamped on it was attached. "This is an addendum to the will, Elena," the lawyer said quietly, handing me the key. "Your father asked to give this to you personally." I will read the text. "Elena, if you are hearing these words, it means your system worked, and you were able to protect my memory from those who saw me as nothing but a checkbook. You always thought I didn't notice you, that I left you alone after Mom died. But I just saw how strong you were, and I made a mistake by deciding that the strong do not need care. You built a career on protecting other people's data, but you don't know where this passion for ciphers and logic comes from. You got it from your mother. In the Metropolitan Bank, in safe deposit box number 714, lies what I worked for my entire life. It's not money, Elena. It is a project that your mother and I started 30 years ago, and which I couldn't complete without her. Now it is yours. Protect it. And finish it. I reached out and took the key. It was cold, and surprisingly heavy. Inside me, somewhere behind the armor of numbers, security protocols and logical chains, a belated childhood feeling stung painfully. My father saw me. He always saw me. 2 hours later, I was already standing in the underground vault of the Metropolitan Bank. Linda and Marcus remained in the lawyer's office. Harris was already calling the police to record the theft of the documents and money, and a long, humiliating evening at the police station awaited them. It didn't concern me anymore. My past family life was erased, like a corrupted sector on a hard drive. The bank clerk turned his key, and I inserted mine. The heavy metal drawer slid out of its slot with a dull click. When the clerk left me alone, I lifted the lid. I expected to see old folders, perhaps stocks or bonds, but inside lay a massive, hermetically sealed metal case resembling a server unit, and an old paper journal in a worn leather binding. I opened the journal. On the first page, written in my mother's neat, flowing handwriting, were the words, Project Aegis, Protocol for Autonomous Encryption of Living Systems. The dates led back to the early 1990s. My mother, Elizabeth Carter, had been an outstanding mathematician of her time, something my father had never spoken to me about. Together with my father, they were developing what today would be called the Holy Grail of cybersecurity, a dynamic coding algorithm based on nonlinear fractals. I flipped through the pages quickly, my professional deformation making my heart beat faster. What they were creating was fundamentally different from anything on the market. Modern cybersecurity systems protect the perimeter. They build walls around data. If the wall is breached, the data is stolen. My mother's algorithm changed the very structure of the data every microsecond, rendering it absolutely useless to anyone who didn't possess the author's live biometric key. It was a self-learning, evolving digital armor. At the end of the journal was a note, written in my father's already trembling hand, shortly before his death. Elena, the industry has gone down the wrong path. Large corporations sell vulnerability under the guise of security so they can endlessly release updates. Project Aegis will destroy this market. On the hard drive in this case is the final code that Elizabeth and I didn't have time to adapt to modern quantum processors. My qualifications weren't enough. But you are the best systems integration specialist in the country. Finish it. Change the world, just as your mother wanted. I looked at the metal case. Inside it slept terabytes of information capable of revolutionizing the global network. It was not just an archive. It was a technological breakthrough a decade ahead of its time. A year passed. I was sitting in a spacious, light-filled office on the top floor of a business center in San Francisco. A modest but already world-famous emblem was inscribed on the glass door, Carter Aegis Systems. In front of my desk, global charts were updating on a huge projection screen. Today was the day of the official release of our main product, the Elizabeth Protocol. It was that very same Aegis that I had adapted, rewritten for the architecture of modern cloud networks and quantum computing. 3 months ago, the biggest tech giants tried to buy the patent from me for astronomical sums of money. They offered me hundreds of millions of dollars just to lock this code away in their private archives. They were afraid of it because our protocol made their multi-billion-dollar antivirus services obsolete. The Carter Aegis product provided absolute, insurmountable protection. Systems no longer lied because they became impossible to hack. I refused to sell. We entered the market on our own. My phone vibrated softly. It was a notification from my legal department. Elena, Marcus Carter's appeal has been denied. The verdict of the court of first instance stands: 4 years of imprisonment for fraud and embezzlement. Linda Carter signed an agreement to transfer the remainder of her property to pay off her son's debts and has officially moved to the country house. Case closed. I closed the notification without even a frown. These people once thought they could leave me in the background, make me disappear, but they forgot the main axiom that my profession taught me. Just because you don't see the system doesn't mean it isn't there. It only means its protection is working perfectly. I walked up to the panoramic window, looking out at the city stretching below, wrapped in the invisible threads of digital signals. Now, those signals were safe. I placed my hand on my mother's old leather journal, resting on the corner of my desk, and whispered softly, "The project is complete, Mom. The systems are running normally." And for the first time in 34 years, my silence was filled with absolute, profound peace. Our story ended exactly as it was supposed to end. Logically, precisely, and justly.